So I'm just going to present on remotely piloted aircraft systems. Insurance seems to be a really hot topic for UAV operators. I'm not sure why, but it seems to be sort of there. This ain't working. There we go. So I'm just going to give a bit of a technology update. I'm not sure what you guys have seen this morning. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. I was travelling up from Melbourne. I'll quickly rush through that, and then we'll get into the insurance and let you guys know what we've done in terms of market verticals and what the actual coverage looks like. So technology update. I'm sure most people in the room are pretty familiar with what a UAV looks like. It's basically built out of three very fundamental components. You have the UAV, which is the aircraft, the payload, which is why you're using the aircraft, and the ground control station, which is how you control the aircraft. And then the fourth component there is spares and accessories, which is what a lot of people actually forget about. That's a significant part of the actual unit, because if something goes wrong when you're out there on the field, chances are you need to draw upon those spares and accessories to be able to make it happen. What we're seeing at the moment internationally as well is a lot of the units that we use locally are actually 100% unmanned. Now, Jim Coyne's probably going to have a crack at me here. Nothing can be 100% unmanned, but you can pretty much run most of the units we use today without any pilot on board at all. We're seeing this in Indonesia and PNG quite a lot. So that's kind of where the technology is at in that respect. What I can see happening over the next sort of few years is the lifting capacity increasing substantially. There's a bit of an arms race between technology minimising to be able to use a more accurate technology on board these type of units, or automation increasing so then they can retrofit current aircraft with UAV automation so you can take the pilot out, which leads into the next slide quite well. Optionally piloted vehicles. Has anyone done a bit of research into OPVs before? Excellent. So as an aviation underwriter, I don't just underwrite UAVs, I also underwrite the general aviation community. And one of the things that we're seeing there is that guys on the floor here, you guys are direct competition to the current general aviation market. You may not see that, but those guys there are seeing, particularly agricultural spraying, aerial photography, they're seeing a reason to be able to, I suppose, upgrade their technology without having to put a lot of money into it. And the best way to do that is to actually just have a software update on their aircraft to make it an automated unit. The optionally piloted vehicle, it's not going to happen in the next 10 years, or it might happen by 2025. But really, it's going to revolutionise the way aviation works in Australia. We have an ageing population of aircraft, and this would give a whole rebirth of all those aircraft being able to operate in remote areas without having to have a pilot on board. In aviation, weight is money, so by taking the pilot out means you've got about an extra 80 kilos to put of fuel on board so you can operate for an extra 2 hours. It's completely up to you. So that's a really interesting topic to look forward to in the next sort of 10 years or so. So the regulatory changes, which is probably the reason why there's so many people here today, and this is, I get numerous questions on this every single day. On the 29th, at the end of this month, end of this week, you won't need to have an REOC for if you're an excluded RPA operation. It's really important to note you have to be an excluded RPA operation, and to be an excluded RPA operation, it changes from day to day. So you can't just go and say, I'm an excluded RPA and I'm going to go fly whatever the hell I want. It doesn't work like that. The very next day, you might require that remote operator certificate. That link on this page, which I will make available to everyone, in actual fact is a flowchart, which is a great flowchart to use to be able to determine whether or not you are an excluded RPA. And I'd encourage all you guys to even forward that on to your friends who are looking to get into this industry. And the credit goes to Reese for this one. He actually made that flowchart, although it is a part of the AAUS resources. The amendments, in my view, this is my view only as a QBE insurance, it's really to reduce the cost of the industry. CASA is under pressure. They haven't got the resources to be able to look after it. QBE is under pressure. We don't have the resources to be able to look after the industry. And generally, most of the companies that are at the starting grid of the UAV industry don't have the resources to be able to look after the exponential growth. So this change in regulation is really to reduce growth and give a lot more flexibility to the guys on the ground to be able to do what they want to do. And then a second tier to that is that the Australian regulations were like way up here, okay? And the rest of the world were like down here. We're not going to be going below the rest of the world. We're just bringing it down to be more competitive on a global scale. We're still going to be more regulated than the rest of the world. It's just going to be on a more even keel. And as Reese touched on before, Professionalism in the industry is a really interesting topic, and it's something I advocate about every single day. A lot of our operational risk has very little to do with the technology that they use. Although it does contribute, it has more to do with the pilot on the ground and their professionalism in being able to pre-plan and post-plan a flight, being able to admit their mistakes and learn from it. So there's three simple steps that we'd encourage everyone to do. We'd love everyone to get a remote operator certificate, but that's not going to happen. So the first one is to become a member of the AAUS. The beauty about doing that is that we have some fantastic stuff coming out over the next month, 2 months, maybe a little bit after that, which is going to be around fly enably, around being professional, about growing as an operator. And the third one there is to complete a certificate in RPAS by a registered training organisation. I do know the New South Wales government are funding a Cert 3 in RPAS, and you can do this at Riverina, TAFE and Albury. That's just one of the things that you can do, and I can see a number of these courses coming up over the next 12 months or so. So insurance, the most fun topic. So what we actually did about 10 months ago is we were getting so many inquiries that we actually did a market vertical analysis of where all these inquiries were coming from. And what I can tell you is your top right, construction, infrastructure, and agriculture, are going to be the two budding industries over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. We've seen a really fast growth in the journalism and real estate photography sectors, but that growth's already, it's kind of been and gone and done, okay? Where we're going to see a significant growth is the construction infrastructure industry. Funnily enough, the resource and energy guys, they're a bit more conservative, and it's probably because they have such a high level of OH&S in a lot of their mines and work sites. Although we are seeing BHP, Rio Tinto operate significant fleets of UAVs, but they're all in-house. I would expect both those companies to start outsource a lot of that over the next 2 years as the excluded RPA becomes more apparent. We did do a market analysis of delivery, and I think Reece just touched on it before. Delivery, from a public's perspective, it's not a risk I want to cover, okay? So it's probably not going to happen. We're seeing it in New Zealand, and the guys there are doing some fantastic work, but the reality is that not only do you have to be able to deliver it to someone, but everyone has to learn how to accept a delivery from a drone. And so I certainly don't. So, and I work in the industry, so that's going to be quite a massive hurdle to overcome. Where I see delivery more working is in open cut mines, where you might have a mechanic at the bottom of an open cut mine, and they might need a spark plug. So rather than having to drive all the way out of the mine to get it, they can just send the spark plug straight down. It'll save them time and money. So defining an aircraft, and where I'm leading with this is about the liability component. All right. So a remotely piloted aircraft is an aircraft under the legislation. It's defined as an aircraft. A model aircraft is a model aircraft. That is not an aircraft. Just to make it really complicated. If you're operating a DJI Inspire 1 from Monday to Friday commercially, you are operating an aircraft. If you operate on Saturday and Sunday for fun, i.e. not earning money or any hire or award or anything that's not sport or recreation, then it's a model aircraft. Why is that critical? Because of strict liability. All right? This is really important that operators understand what strict liability is, because it's not well known by UAV operators. CASA can only control effectively operational regulations, but behind the operational regulations there's a couple of Civil Aviation Act and the Damaged by Aircraft Act, which sets up the boundaries for how the aviation industry works. And RPAS use for commercial operations is defined as an aircraft, so you're subject to the Damaged by Aircraft Act. What this means for an operator is if you crash that aircraft into someone or something, it's not a matter of proving negligence, it's get your checkbook out and write how much. Okay? So, and to say that there's no risk, I've seen plenty of accidents. I see them every single day, and there's plenty of risk. And we'll get into a couple of claims in just a moment that we didn't write. I can't show you the ones that we wrote, unfortunately. I'm happy to take questions on that later as well. That is a really hot topic at the moment, because the excluded RPA category is still going to fall under the strict liability regime. So they're going to, and these guys aren't going to know that they're going to be strictly liable. So the first time we're going to see something like this is, unfortunately, when someone gets hurt and it's taken to court, and they're going to be they could lose a house, quite literally. If they breach regulation, then there won't be any insurance in place for them either, because we can't cover an illegal operation. So this is what the hull cover looks like, and I was just looking over. I've got one of my fantastic clients over here, Aerobugs. He's a great guy. If you get a chance, go chat with, is it Nathan, yeah? Good guy. So go chat with him. I just want to take the opportunity. I want to give you a plug too. Yeah. Aerobugs. Good. I've also got Mark Xavier out the back from VTOL Aerospace. He's a good guy. Here's another one. Where are you, Mark? Put your hand up wherever you are. He's probably gone. So hull cover's built into two major components. All right, you've got full flight risks and you've got ground risks. Ground risks does not mean if you crash the aircraft into the ground, it's covered. That's full flight risks. Ground risks is when it's just covered for theft and flood and fire on the grounds. Accidental damage for full flight risks is covered for pilot error. So if you crash into a tree, which is the most common cause, that would be covered for full flight risks. You'd need to take out full flight risk cover, which a lot of people do take out. So we have another thing called specified events, and it's really important to understand the difference between accidental damage and specified events. So accidental damage covers everything unless I tell you it is excluded. A specified events coverage covers specified items, so theft, fire, flood, all that type of stuff. The specified events for the UAV coverage is in relation to road transit. So it's for you guys driving from job to job. If you put it on the back of a toll truck and send it across the country, you'll need to take out a separate policy. This is for your operational risk driving from job to job. And it's really important to know that illegal uses are excluded. And to date, I've never declined a claim for illegal use, which is really important to note. That's because of our due diligence when we take on our clients. We don't just write anyone and everyone. Because we have, although I'm an underwriter and QBE are here to make money, that's not a lie, we're a public listed company, I've got to make sure that I don't have to give Nathan a 25% increase on his premium next year because the rest of my book's just crashing all the time. So I have to protect his interests by making sure that other risks on the book are doing well. I skipped past one, didn't I? So liability. So the liability binds to the aircraft itself, and it's really important to understand that because of the strict liability on aircraft, we need to note every single aircraft that you're operating on the policy. If we do that, not only can we quantify the risks that we've got, we're able to guarantee that we're going to be able to cover the strict liability in the event of an accident. Okay, so that covers accidental bodily injury and property damage as a result of an aircraft accident. So it has to be an accident. So talking about the privacy stuff before, privacy wouldn't be covered because there is no accident involved. Taking a picture of someone and then flying off into the sunset and then posting it on the front page of the Herald Sun with a naked lady on the front page of the Herald Sun, that's not going to be covered, okay? Which actually happened in Victoria, by the way. What I would really encourage if that does happen, to write a really formal letter saying, I'm really, really sorry, and take down the photo on the billboard and then replace it as soon as possible. A couple of things for mitigation that we've identified through the claims that we've experienced is excellent and standardised pre-flight planning. Pre-flight planning is probably the most important part of any operation. If you can't pre-flight your aircraft or even plan your operation, then you're guaranteed to have a loss. We've got real estate photographers out there that will just rock up on a job, chuck the Inspire on the ground, start her up, do the photo, and then come back down. I guarantee those guys will crash one day. The guys that take 10 minutes to do a walk around, to actually identify what the risks are, to see if there's any trees or any obstacles that they haven't identified, those are the guys that won't crash. And at the end of the day, you might get your aircraft paid out, but the loss of income that you're going to experience for 2 or 3 weeks because you're not going to get the money to be able to buy a new unit, then we can't cover that at this stage. Maintaining currency and actively seeking recurrency. This is a really interesting one. There are no requirements for recurrency training, which is in complete contrast to any aviation, to all aviation. I'm a commercial pilot as well, and I have to do a BFR once every 2 years, a check flight, or I have to do 3 takeoffs and landings to take passengers. There is no requirement to do any recurrency training for an RPAS operator. This is something that we need to develop as an industry standard over the next few years, is to have operators even do check flights with their chief remote pilots to make sure they're still competent. Because over time you become complacent and you start clipping the edges, And then over time, that circle gets smaller and smaller, the envelope gets smaller, and eventually you'll crash. Premises liability. Premises liability is an aviation term for public liability. Public liability covers you trip and slip. Everyone's familiar with public liability, generally speaking. Public liability doesn't cover the UAV. So if you crash the UAV, it's not going to be covered by public liability. It'll need to be covered by aviation third-party liability. All right? And if you have any questions about that, you can call me directly, or David Tate's just there. He's from Aviation Insurance Brokers Australia. He's an aviation specialist broker, so he deals with us as well. So he'll be able to help you out also. Dave, do you want to chuck your hand up? I'll give him a plug. And the most important one there, which I just want to introduce, and every time I do a presentation, I like to introduce, is airmanship. It's not caning the operator across the back of the thighs by saying you're doing the wrong thing. It's walking up to him and educating him about what is right and wrong. These guys that are doing the wrong thing, they might not even know they're doing the right thing, the wrong thing. That's what I meant to say. So it's really important just to get in front and say, oh mate, do you know that you can't actually operate here without a remote operator certificate? Chances are they'll say, shit, I didn't even know, all right? And then they won't do it again. But that's how we're going to, prolong the worst. Excellent. Let's flick through. I want to get to some incidents and accidents. All right, so most of the operators probably would have seen this in the news. It's a drone operator in America that was fined $1.9 million for operating in Chicago and New York. Although in Australia we're not going to get a $1.9 million fine, why this is important for an insurance company from... I got the chicken. Am I done? All right, next one, LiPo batteries. We won't worry about that. LiPo batteries is what keeps me up at night. If you don't store them right, they blow up. All right, we can spend more time on that later. For anyone who tells me that UAVs can't do damage, this weighs about 3 kilos and went through a tin roof. It can certainly do damage from about 40 feet. So, and that was in Perth, so they can do damage. And the last one is just be mindful of other aircraft out there. They're not expecting you. So just give them a phone call. Putting a NOTAM in the weather probably isn't enough. Normally I take questions, but we're not going to have time. I've got chickens.